I don't normally come to the aid of people like Lee Anderson, the fellow who wears a T-shirt and um, pontificates. But Lee Anderson is always very interesting. And he's put out a tweet, which I've only just seen. I'm not sure what day it occurred. I'm going to read out the whole tweet because I think it's instructive. This happened today, he says. Earlier today, while walking to Parliament with Sarah for Runcorn, a man shouted "fascist" right into my face. I then politely told the man that I am always interested in feedback from the public and asked him why he thought we were fascists. Now, I think actually what he was doing was saying that Lee Anderson was a fascist, but anyway. His reply was, "Because you're all fascists." I then asked him to highlight something we had said or done that was fascist. He said, "Everything." I then asked him if he had any clue what he was talking about. He answered, "I'm a professor. Of course I know what I'm talking about." I congratulated him on being an academic and once again asked him to provide proof of anything to back up his claims of us being a fascist. He walked away saying, "Because you're all racists." I say, that's all they have to say. Well, I think it's interesting, and I am disappointed that someone who claims to be a professor was lost for words. I don't think I am, and I'm going to address this issue as best I can. Let's begin with a clear distinction between an objective fact, that's something which is verifiable, it can be corroborated with evidence, measured, confirmed independently of personal feeling, and a subjective judgment, by contrast, which arises from individual interpretation, experience, or perception. And when assessing whether Lee Anderson or Reform UK is racist or fascist, we're inevitably caught between these two poles, the observable and the thing that you can infer from your personal experience. The tension is not just semantic, it lies at the heart of modern political discourse and at the heart of the firestorm surrounding Anderson's comments about people like, for example, Sadiq Khan. Now, Lee Anderson, now aligned with Reform UK, accused the London Mayor Sadiq Khan of handing control of the capital to his Islamist mates. And he later clarified that he didn't think Islamists had taken over the country, just the mayor, and when pressed, he refused to apologise. Now, Sadiq Khan, supported by several community leaders, stated that Anderson's words were not merely offensive, but Islamophobic, anti-Muslim, and racist. Civil rights activist Al Sharpton described them as despairingly racist. The Prime Minister at the time, meanwhile, acknowledged the language was wrong, but denied it was racist. That I think was Rishi Sunak. The disagreement raises a deeper question. How do we know when a statement is racist? Can we prove it or must we interpret it? So there are people who have been specific about racist statements that they believe Lee Anderson has made. Yet, of course, he hasn't been charged with a racist offence. Objectively, we can examine the language, context, and effect. So the language, talking about Islamist mates, using the word Islamist, it's a loaded phrase. Islamist means an extremist ideology. Conflating it with a Muslim mayor invites the charge of guilt by religious association. The statement was made during a period of rising anti-Muslim hatred, and police reports confirm a surge in Islamophobic incidents as noted by Khan and others. The effect, the public reaction, included fear within Muslim communities, suggesting tangible harm that was caused. And here's where subjectivity intrudes. Anderson's defenders argue he was criticising political weakness, not ethnicity or religion. They claim the offence taken is political hypersensitivity. Thus, objectively, the language used correlates with patterns of anti-Muslim sentiment. Subjectively, intent remains contested. Was it clumsy rhetoric or calculated dog whistling? In other words, is Lee Anderson just a fool, or is he intentionally nasty? And that's a moot point, isn't it, really? And that's where I would have expected somebody who claims to be a professor to be able to deal with these issues. Not necessarily to be able to have a conclusion, but at least to be able to articulate specifics. Because if we can't ask our students to produce specifics, or if we ask our students to produce specifics, then we should be able to do the same thing. Because that's what academic rigor requires. So claiming you're a professor and that's the end of the sentence. That's nothing. You can claim to be a dustman, or a farmer. You need to actually do the job in order to demonstrate that the name is effective, is appropriate. And the political rhetoric, the plausible deniability, this is the area where Lee Anderson and where Farage excel. Anderson's career is a study in plausible deniability, whether it's food banks, Brexit protesters, or Muslims in London. His tactic is to provoke without taking responsibility. By saying, I don't think Islamists control Britain, just can't, he allows himself an exit ramp, what some call strategic ambiguity. It's a game of bait and retreat. Stoke the fire, then claim you're only meant to light a candle. But I think the actual word Islamist is itself rhetorically racist. It's racist. It's charged with racism. And Reform UK's broader strategy mirrors exactly what Lee Anderson is doing. Lee Anderson didn't belong in Labour or in the Conservative Party. He belongs in Reform UK. Their messaging flirts with nationalist tropes without quite embracing fascism. The dog doesn't bark, it growls. So the other issue, which this person in the street, who is unnamed, which makes me wonder whether or not the event actually occurred. This is this is very much like a sort of false flag thing. It's a very interesting story. It's a very entertaining story, and Lee Anderson is very good with his stories. Is Anderson a fascist? That's the second question. No, not in the classical sense. And I find it interesting that the professor attacks Anderson, but Anderson responds with a sort of papal we. He takes responsibility for the entire Reform UK assembly. So is Anderson a fascist? Well, not in the classical sense. Is Reform UK? Reform UK lacks a paramilitary wing. It contests elections. Its ideology is reactive, not totalitarian. But it is fascist adjacent. It scapegoats minorities. It undermines democratic institutions. It lionizes the ordinary bloke over the out-of-touch elite. That is definitely a fascist signal. And it treats disagreement as treason. It echoes what Umberto Eco, a wonderful author with so many books, by the way, his library was a labyrinth. It echoes what Umberto Eco calls fascism, a constellation of impulses, styles, and habits that reflect fascism without any formal structure of fascism. So Anderson's rhetoric about parasites, scroungers, and Islamist mates is not merely discourteous, it's rhetorically inflammatory in a way that edges close to this ideological posture. So Lee Anderson is not a fascist as such, and nor is Reform UK fascist as such. But Lee Anderson is definitely a fascist edger. He is using the grammar, or Reform UK is using the grammar of fascism, if not quite the vocabulary. So where does this leave us? Lee Anderson's remarks are not provably racist in a court, but they can be interpreted as racist with good reason. The objective indicators, language, context, and effect suggest that at the very least he is guilty of inflaming anti-Muslim sentiment. Whether or not he is a racist is an entirely subjective judgment, but his words function as racism. And somebody who is making an accusation to Lee Anderson should at least have the courtesy to give examples. It's not the person who's being attacked who has to produce examples to justify the attack. It's the person who is doing the attacking. If you're actually going to shout at somebody racist, at least have some examples ready to be able to be able to defend that rather shocking allegation. I always come to the aid of Nigel Farage when it comes to claims of racism, because I don't see any evidence of Farage being a racist, but I do see evidence of him indulging racism. Now, there are many reasons why you might indulge the racism of people that you know, but if you're a leader of a political party, and if that political party is being accused of racism, I think you have a duty to call it out if you don't approve of it. We should not function. We should not confuse the lack of confession with the absence of harm. And Reform UK, not fascist, not yet, but it is cosplaying something very dangerous and a kind of demagogic performance politics that relies on scapegoats, thrives on victimhood, and substitutes volume for vision. If racism is judged only by intention, we excuse every bigot who claims to speak plainly. If fascism is recognized only by uniforms and salutes, we miss its subtler returns. The problem with racism in all its forms is that mostly it simply requires education. And the reason people, I think, are racist is because they don't know people of different cultures, number one. And number two, because they have, as in South Pacific, it is rather beautifully expressed, they have been taught to be racist. They have taught that that is right. And so it comes down to education. And I would hope in my small way that I can do something to repair that damage. So, yes, I would do everything I can to excuse Mr. Farage. I would do everything I can to excuse Lee Anderson. But the charge of racism, the charge of fascism, these are words which circle around the Reform UK camp. And I think people who are attracted by Reform UK should be well aware of the potency of these words and of that language, because as time goes by, we are dignifying the language, we are making that language more familiar. We are becoming immune to those issues. The challenge in our politics is not simply to call out what is illegal, but to reckon with what is corrosive. And Anderson may never apologise. He may never have thought that he's done anything wrong. I may think that he needs more education, but we should not apologise for calling a fire alarm when we smell smoke. We should not apologise for it. We should continue to call it out. And we should continue to question the likes of Lee Anderson and Nigel Farage and Reform UK. But we should do so with information. We shouldn't be vague and silly and scream little platitudes and slogans at Reform UK. That does nobody any good. For the record, I don't think that encounter actually took place. But I think it's a great story, and Lee Anderson, you are a wonderful storyteller. But tall tales don't necessarily mean truth, do they?